Crypto products are unregulated and could be highly volatile. Please be aware of the risks before investing.
राज, बाबूजी के आशीर्वाद से हमने अपनी नई शुरुआत तो कर ली, पर अपना फ्यूचर प्लान कैसे करें?
बड़े-बड़े शहरों में ऐसी छोटी-छोटी बातें होती रहती हैं।
Looking for perfect start? Get a Bitcoin today. Download the Unocoin app.
जब मैं तेरी उम्र का था ना, तो एक सक्सेसफुल करियर, लॉन्ग टर्म प्लानिंग सब रेडी करके रख चुका था। और एक इन महाराज को देखो, पूरा दिन फोन में लगा रहेगा।
दैट प्लानिंग तो मैंने भी कर रखी है, Unocoin के साथ।
नए जमाने के साथ नई चीजें आजमाएं। Looking for Bitcoin? Download the Unocoin app.
Guys, we really need to work hard. This wasn't a good quarter. Tell me, are you happy with this?
Yes! Unocoin.
Want to earn Bitcoin? Just grab your phone and shake it. Download the Unocoin app.
Bitcoin.
Get a systematic buying plan from the Unocoin app to get your Bitcoin today. Download the Unocoin app.
हेलो गाइस, एक बार फिर आप सबका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है Unocoin के EMA एपिसोड में। हाय सनी, कैन यू हियर मी?
Loud and clear.
So today our topic is very interesting. Like we always do a little bit of bit chat over here. Bitcoin, better asset कैसे है real estate से? So in India specifically, when we talk about real asset is seen as a very good place to invest in. And when we talk about, comparing Bitcoin with that, I think we have the very right person here with us who will tell us why Bitcoin is a better investment than real estate. So for that, I would like to welcome Sunny here. Sunny, as you already know him, is the president and co-founder of your favorite crypto exchange, Unocoin. Hi Sunny, how are you doing?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm great, actually. So, guys,
Awesome.
I know this is a very interesting and also very conflicting topic because from the core beliefs, you all think that maybe, real estate is still the stable kind of investment and everything else. So, obviously, just drop down whatever questions you have, any opinions you have, just drop them down in the comment section and we'll have a very good discussion over here. So starting off, Sunny, so we'll not straight away start with the topic. There's something interesting that I came across recently, and that's about Bitcoin ETFs. And that's a very interesting thing. You want to have a little discussion in the start before we jump onto the main topic?
Yeah, well, I mean, if there is anybody here for the original topic, I just wanted to rattle off a couple of the high-level reasons, so they get a peek of kind of what we'll be talking about. Is that okay? And then I want to talk about ETFs. I want to talk about the price is up. I want to talk about dominance. Bitcoin dominance is above 51%. If you compare it to all other cryptos, a couple of things, but a couple of the topics I'll be touching on: why Bitcoin's better, liquidity, transferability, divisibility. We're going to talk about accessibility, anonymity, lower transaction costs, the fact that Bitcoin has a supply limit, the fact that Bitcoin gives you independence, and we've got another 10 or 11 kind of points stacked up that we're going to share with people. So yeah, with that said, let's get into it. So ETFs, talk to me. What do you want to what caught your interest?
Yeah, actually, so I've been hearing these news where maybe Kathy Wood's ARK investment was trying to maybe get this approval about the whole Bitcoin ETF thing from SEC maybe like a year ago, so they didn't get it. But now this other company called BITX, if I'm right, I don't recall the name properly. They got the very first ETF approved from the SEC. So what do you think about that? Like, what do you think? How is it positive for the crypto narrative, Bitcoin narrative, and maybe how is it negative and things?
I don't know. I think it's kind of like God. I'm still trying to formulate my opinion. I haven't quite landed on one yet. I think from a high level, obviously, and it's not that the company you mentioned, but yeah, there's a big names as well. I don't know if you heard BlackRock.
Yes, yes.
BlackRock, in many ways, they for better or worse, control the world. They have a ton of money. They have just a ridiculous amount of like assets under management. And so that's the one that really caught my attention when I heard that BlackRock is launching an ETF. The ETF that did launch, from what I heard, it's more like a leveraged ETF of sort, which is a bit like, I don't understand, because they're talking about risks and Bitcoin's too risky, and so the first ETF you launch is a leveraged ETF instead of like a spot. So that sounds a bit like contradictory. But look, I think overall, I feel like it could be bullish. There is this fear, I think, amongst the community that perhaps this is yet another vehicle of control, of price manipulation, et cetera, et cetera. But look, I think ultimately it's going to open up the floodgates for more institutions, people, high net worth individuals, family offices to just get into Bitcoin. So I think it's long-term bullish. I mean, I kind of feel like everything is good for Bitcoin in some way. Bad things are good for Bitcoin. Good things are good for Bitcoin, like a honey badger, where it just keeps trucking along. Bitcoin's up. I don't know what the exact percentage is this year, but 80% or something. I think in the last week or so, Bitcoin went above $30,000, which was a big thing. And then the thing I wanted to mention as well is that you're probably turning blue in the face by hearing me just talk about Bitcoin. Like, when is this going to talk about some dog coins or something, right? But I keep coming back to Bitcoin. But if you look, there's a very interesting data point that I always argue with my friend Antoine about. He's like a crypto, guy, right? And I'm a Bitcoin guy, and so we're always arguing. And we look at this thing called the market dominance, and anybody can find it just by Googling, Bitcoin market dominance. And what it does is it kind of puts the the total kind of market cap of Bitcoin versus all the other cryptos, so like thousands of them. And what you see is that the market cap of Bitcoin has now, gone above 50%. So, and this is kind of why I've been pushing for our company and our team to just really focus on Bitcoin, because especially in times of bear markets and whatnot, the Bitcoin is really, or the Bitcoin is really the one that kind of is the signal, and it's the one that tends to take off first, and because of its sound kind of fundamentals, and then the others tend to follow. So I don't know. That's kind of my 2 cents on it in terms of the ETFs. I'm still kind of reserving my judgment. We'll see how it plays out, but I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm kind of excited that I do think this could be a kind of a bullish sentiment. Yesterday I was watching. Have you ever heard of a guy named Nassim Taleb?
Sorry?
Have you ever heard of a guy named Nassim Taleb?
No.
He wrote a book called The Black Swan. He's
Okay.
a pretty famous guy, and he's kind of like, he used to be very pro Bitcoin, and he's from like, kind of, you could say, traditional financial services. He also predicted one of the big crashes way back in the day. He's a well-respected gentleman. As I was watching an interview of his yesterday, it was quite fascinating. And some of the interviewers were like, look, you don't like Bitcoin, so what's going on? This is 13 years in, the thing is still here, and the price hasn't collapsed. And he was just humming and hoeing, and they said, look, what about now BlackRock and all these big institutions are getting in? Like, what are your thoughts? So it was nice to see, the intellectuals have a bit of a like do not compute moment. And I think, I don't know, like I said, I think Bitcoin, I don't know, I've been in this space for 11, 12 years, and it's like never a dull moment. Every day it just gets more and more exciting.
More and more exciting. Totally agreed. And even the topic that we have for today, Sunny, is very exciting, especially for the India-centric audience. Because, yeah, I mean, if I go and ask my, family people, okay, what's the best investment? Without a doubt, without a blink, they'll say real estate. So we're gonna. Mhm.
But you know what? Let's start there. Let's start where people are at, because I want to first tell people why they're right. You know what I mean? Like, before we tell them why they should be thinking about Bitcoin, I'd actually argue that they're right on some levels, because one thing you cannot do with Bitcoin is you can't live in it. So Bitcoin doesn't put a roof over your head physically, right? It's like this digital asset. So I think calling a spade and recognizing that, comparing Bitcoin and real estate is kind of funny in some ways, right? Because obviously, like I said, Bitcoin doesn't put a roof over your head, but Bitcoin does put a roof over your head. Now, where do I come with this? So let's say your goal is to buy a house 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and you saved in rupees, and you saved in dollars, or you saved in fiat that was being inflated away at 5 or 10% a year. You're never going to get to your goal because the closer you get to your goal, the further your goal gets away because of inflation. So Bitcoin may be your best bet to buy a house. As in, if you actually save in Bitcoin, and for the reasons we'll be talking about, divisibility, limited, liquidity, accessibility, blah, 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 all these reasons will, I think, enable the next generation of young people to have a chance at buying a house. So maybe I'll start there and we'll dovetail into the rest of the topic. But I wanted to mention that is that, yeah, maybe people are right. And so they should listen to this even more.
Absolutely. I think, when we talk about having a roof on our heads, real estate is our thing. But okay, so let's just get started on that point, Sunny. So why are they right? Let's just understand this.
They're right because, like I said, I like, ultimately Bitcoin is a digital commodity, right? So it's not even physical, meaning if it was made out of silver, you could melt it and maybe create a tin house or something. Bad example. But my point is, Bitcoin is none of that. So you ultimately, I mean, if you do not have a place to live, I would argue renting, at least, is probably a smart thing to do to get a roof over your head. But what we're going to talk about more today, I would argue, is like somebody has a house, let's say, right? And they want to buy a second house for an investment purpose, right? And they're thinking, oh, do I put that money into the second house, or do I buy Bitcoin with it, right? That's one example. Another example I gave is somebody who doesn't even have a house, who's thinking, oh my God, am I ever going to be able to catch up to inflation? So maybe I'll save in Bitcoin. So I guess I want to move. I mean, to start with, I think it's not, I don't think it's an either or per se. It could be an and. Like I said, the individual who's trying to save for the future to buy a house may choose Bitcoin as their vehicle. And guess what? There's a company called Ledin, right, that in Canada that I'm friends with, some of the CEO and whatnot. They recently launched a mortgage, a mortgage that's backed by Bitcoin. So let's say you have a bunch of Bitcoin, you can get a mortgage against it for a house that they collateralize, right? So super interesting. And again, it's for these like newer, kind of wealthier young individuals that have been saving Bitcoin that they're targeting. So my point is it's not either or. I do think that Bitcoin could be a vehicle for people to eventually buy a house. Again, is it guaranteed? No. But if you look at the performance of Bitcoin, let's say in the last 10, 11 years, it's gone up astronomically from $5 or $10 to $30,000 today. So you could argue that if someone had bought a bunch of Bitcoin 10 years ago, today they could buy as many houses as they want. They could buy their whole neighborhood, right? And so I guess the first point I wanted to make is that like if you're talking to people who haven't even bought, who are just young, this could be a way to save and a way to buy a house. But the second group of people, I think, where we kind of go head to head and talk about as an investment, those are maybe people who already have a house and are looking at buying a second or third, or they see real estate as an investment. So I guess, do you want to get into why I think Bitcoin's better, or do you want to talk about why they're right? So again, I think they're right because they need a roof over their head. Now, when we compare investment, I don't think they're right, because all you have to do is look at the price of real estate, let's say in India or wherever in the world for the last 100 years, and you can chart how the price of real estate is going up, and then you can chart it versus Bitcoin, and you see, once again, Bitcoin has considerably outperformed real estate. Now, I think people think that real estate outperforms Bitcoin because there's this like sense of illusion that people kind of don't really grasp, which is leverage. So when somebody buys a house, they're actually not buying the house, right? Most people in India, do people still get mortgages, right? People get mortgages, right? Like most people don't just buy a house outright because they don't have the money. So what they'll do is they'll put 10% down or something. So let's say the house is $1 million or a million rupees or something. They'll put down 10%. So they'll put down 100,000 or $100,000 or rupees, but the rest of the house is on mortgage. So it's like they borrowed that money. So now if the total price of the house goes up by 10%, it goes from $1 million to 110,000. They only put 100,000, but they just made 100,000. So that's 100% profit on their initial investment, even though the real estate market only went up 10%. Does that make sense? So real estate market went up 10%, but the person doubled their money, which is 100% gain. So the reason that occurred is because they actually leveraged money. Does that make sense? So they're borrowing money. So people don't equate that when they compare. They go, oh, look, real estate, I just put in 10,000 and now that 10,000 is doubled, tripled, quadrupled. But guess what? If the real estate market went the other way, you would be exposed the other way equally as much, right? So important to first of all understand that when people buy houses, mortgage is kind of a leverage, right? So it's important not to compare that. But when you just look at asset value, Bitcoin kills real estate, right? For so many reasons. So do you want to get into some of those, like one by one, or what do you say?
Yeah, let's get into them one by one. But let's see what all comments you have gotten here. David here is saying have this issue, not refund ETFs. Okay, so I'm not quite getting your question, David. Just maybe rephrase this a little. I'm assuming it's regarding tax. So maybe Sunny will try to help you as much as he can in that particular sphere. But okay, Sandeep.
I'm not sure what he's referring to there. Yeah, if he wants to rephrase the question. I don't think there's any questions on the side there, so we can just keep going, no? I will just call him out if there's any good questions.
Absolutely. So, guys, if you have any questions, just go ahead and drop them in the comment sections. So,
Sure.
Sunny, when we talk about real estate and Bitcoin is specifically known for the volatility part, and whereas real estate is known to be a stable investment. On what grounds would we say that, okay, Bitcoin is still better, even though it's volatile and not as stable?
That's a great question. So a couple things to note about Bitcoin's volatility is that, obviously it's a new asset class, right? Especially 10 years ago when we all learned about it, it was very new. And if you looked at Bitcoin, let's say 10 years ago, it could go from $5 to $10 to $15 back to $5. Now that's a giant move. Like if you would have put, some money in $5 and it went to 15 and back to 5, that's like a huge move in terms of doubling, tripling of price, 100% move in a few days. So it was very, very volatile because not many people knew about it. And even the slightest whale, somebody with like a lot of money comes in and they can make the price go up, or somebody sells a lot of Bitcoin, the price goes down. So as time goes on, The as the market cap increases, right? So like I said, when I first heard about Bitcoin, I think it was $50 million market cap. Today, if it's 51% of a trillion, that's 500 million. So that's done, like a 10x, no, 500 billion. Oh my God, I can't even do the numbers on that. That's like ginormous in terms of how big it's gotten compared to 10 years ago. So as the market cap increases and more players enter, the volatility subsides and it goes down, right? So today, you don't see Bitcoin going from $30,000 to like the equivalent of going from 5 to 10 would be going from $30,000 to $60,000 and then to 100,000 and back to 30,000 in a week. That doesn't happen. It's going up, 5%, 10%, down maybe a little bit, but it's still fairly stable. Now, if you compare it to real estate, it's obviously quite a bit more volatile. But I would also argue that, and so this, I don't think the volatility for Bitcoin will go down in the next 10, 20 years until, the whole world has really adopted it in the way we think they will. I think Bitcoin will continue to have volatility. But an important point to note is that volatility is the price you pay for receiving the gains that you get. So in Bitcoin, it's very true that it's volatile. And again, it's kind of hard to compare Bitcoin to real estate because of their different classes. They serve different purposes, but we're, playing a game here, so we'll try our best. But ultimately, so it will subside over time, and I think, and I do think it is risky, and people should not bet the farm on it, and should not put all their savings into Bitcoin. It should only be a tiny percentage. You should not put more money into it than you can afford to lose, etc., etc. But again, one way to mitigate volatility. So I think Unocoin was one of the first in the world to launch this dollar cost averaging, or we call it a systematic investment plan. So it's to just kind of dollar cost average into Bitcoin. So every week, every month, buy a little bit. And what that does is that even if the price goes up, you buy Bitcoin. If it goes down, you buy Bitcoin. And over time, your price kind of averages out. And you don't need to worry as much as volatility, because if the price drops, let's say 10% this month, well, you're just buying more Bitcoin with the same amount of rupees. So that's why I think, so I don't know if that speaks to the volatility nature, but it's essentially, it's different. It's not as stable as real estate, but we think over time it will reach stability. And then today, the volatility is ultimately the price you pay for receiving these types of gains. And again, one way to mitigate that is to use something like systematic investment plan.
I think 100%. If we are talking about maybe 20, 30 years later, maybe the volatility is not going to be as great as that is for the real estate right now. But if we are talking about 100 years later, who knows? It could be a better and a more stable class than any other asset class that has maybe ever existed. Because Bitcoin never fails to surprise when we talk about it. And another interesting thing that I feel about is I'm having a little bit of trouble with your video, Sunny. Are you here?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Perhaps it's a network issue. No problem.
Oh, I can see
So,
you. Yeah, go ahead.
so another problem, another thing that I feel about Bitcoin is one of these AMAs with Pranav Maheshwari is also a very prominent YouTuber around Bitcoin. He said this one thing: alpha lies in being early to the technology. So that kind of hit me, and I've been repeating that in almost each of my AMAs after that. And it's interesting how, if we are early to this particular technology, maybe if how our ancestors say that, okay, if we would have bought this particular building maybe these many years ago, this would be its price right now. I think that's a very similar scenario with Bitcoin. So
Yeah, I like that. I like that saying.
on
Yeah, I
that,
agree.
let's take a few questions that are there in the comment section. Crypto Trailblazers here is asking, what are some real estate problems that Bitcoin could solve?
What are some? So I think one big problem is people just don't have money to buy real estate. A lot of young people. So, and I think one of the reasons people don't have money is because they're climbing an uphill battle, i.e., inflation, right? So, and when we're seeing it kind of strike right now. And so I think Bitcoin, what it does is it puts the chips in your side, right? And gives you a chance to actually fight against inflation because of the limited number of Bitcoins that exist. And and I think it opens up the ability for people to, like I said, dream again and think about, hey, look, maybe in 10 years I can buy real estate. So I think in that way it kind of helps. And then I gave an example of the companies that are now offering Bitcoin-backed mortgages, which I think is a kind of a perfect example of like how Bitcoin can serve the real estate market. But I think we've spent a lot of time on kind of like the complementary aspects, but I think now we should maybe get into like the more like like obviously why Bitcoin is better than real estate, because we've touched on how Bitcoin can enable you to get real estate, how we've touched around the edges, but it might be interesting to go deeper into it.
Absolutely. There's another question which we'll take before that, which
Sure.
is also kind of related to that. So, Crypto Trailblazer is again asking, there are a lot of people who buy real estate from Bitcoin. Then how is Bitcoin better?
Well, like I was saying, I mean, I think better is a subjective word, and we're gonna get into why it's better. I've got like 20 reasons lined up here on my screen that we're gonna go through. But what we're trying to say is that it's again, it's dependent on the person, what their needs are. If that individual does not have a roof over their head and having a home that they own is a high priority, then what we're saying is Bitcoin could be a vehicle that they could use as again, not as their only means of savings. They might want to use gold and stocks and other things. But we think, again, given its historical performance over the last 10, 11 years, that it is living up to its promise. And there's a reason that nation states are adopting it, and BlackRock's launching ETF, and Fidelity's launching Bitcoin products. And so there is like a complementary nature, but I'm excited to get into like the obvious reasons why Bitcoin is kind of better. So we'll talk about that shortly.
Absolutely. I think, Sunny, now we should get into the obvious reasons. And, we know there are plenty. So, why do you think is Bitcoin considered a better asset than real estate, in your opinion?
Yeah. So ultimately, Bitcoin is trying to be the best form of money, right? It's trying to be like this this apex predator of money, and real estate is not, right? Real estate is trying to be a place that you live. So I think for that reason alone, Bitcoin really kind of surpasses real estate. So if we talk about it, right? So for example, let's say you own a home, okay, and you need some of that money because you have a family emergency or you just need the money. How do you get it? Like, it's not very liquid, right? You need to go sell the house or do a refinancing, and maybe 6 months later, hopefully if you're lucky, you get some liquidity. So number one reason I would say is Bitcoin is highly liquid. You can go to an exchange like wherever, and you can trade your Bitcoin for rupees or dollars instantaneously. So I would say that's the first reason, right, as to why Bitcoin is better, is like you have high sources of or high amounts of liquidity. The next reason I wrote down here is transferability, right? So let's say, again, you have your home in wherever, Bangalore, okay? And I say, hey, can you send me some of your home because we're going to do a business deal together. How are you going to zap your home over the ocean? It's impossible, right? So now if you talk about business and commerce, Bitcoin is far superior because it operates like an email. You just click a button, your friend in New York, boom, he has the $10 that you owe him for whatever, right? So I think transferability, Bitcoin takes the cake. Okay, and again, these are some of the things we're talking about. They're just like not even fair because again, Bitcoin was designed to be this kind of this apex predator of money. And just stop me if I'm kind of going too fast. But the third reason I had was divisibility, right? Let's say you said hey Sunny, okay, I have to buy this loaf of bread. You can't just go and like take your sink off of the the washroom and go to the store and be like, sir, I need a piece of bread. So the house is not divisible, and so Bitcoin is divisible up to 9 decimal places, right? So those are 3 reasons. I would say number 4 would be accessibility, right? Anybody, literally my 5-year-old kid, could get her hands on Bitcoin. She could just create a Bitcoin wallet for free. because you don't need, bank account, you don't need to have history, you don't need to have a job, you don't need to have credit. These are all things that you need to even think about getting a mortgage. You don't even need a bank account, for crying out loud. You just need to be able to hit a button, create a QR code, and now my daughter could be selling ice cream, at the local whatever baseball game here and collect Bitcoin in lieu of it. And so I would argue that Bitcoin is highly accessible, whether you're the poorest person on earth or whether you're the richest person on earth, whether you're young or old, black or white. Bitcoin does not discriminate, right? And I would argue the entire financial system, which mortgages are predicated upon, is highly discriminatory. Like, for example, if you're a poor person that doesn't even have a record, right? Like a credit history, the bank will laugh at you and they'll say, who are you? But you're like, I need a house, I need a place to get in so I can start having a record and a history. Oh, well, it's like a chicken or the egg problem. So number 4 reason I had kind of jotted down was accessibility, right? Maybe I'll pause there. Any questions about those so far? Like I said, I've got kind of this long. Okay, yeah. Let me know if I'm losing you on any of these. Okay, number 5, transaction fees, right? So Bitcoin now with Lightning and everything costs almost nothing to transact. If you wanted to, let's say, transfer your home's deed or whatever to me, that's a long process, right? You can't just transfer any of this, right? Number 6, anonymity, right? So let's say you're worth $10 million and you just don't want the world to know that you have that money because you don't want to have a target on your back. You just want the financial freedom. You want to live in peace in a tiny hut. Well, guess what? I mean, Bitcoin, again, gives you that ability to be anonymous. And I would argue the best example of that anonymity is Satoshi. Who is Satoshi? Nobody knows, right? Still to this day, nobody knows. So that, I think, proves that Bitcoin does have this incredibly powerful thing that I think all humans and businesses require, which is the ability to be anonymous. And a house is kind of the opposite of anonymity, right? You're like positioning yourself. Another point, again, we kind of touched on this, and again, maybe instead of me just rattling through these, it should be a bit more conversational so I don't put people to sleep. But so far, I've talked about liquidity, transferability, divisibility, accessibility, lower transaction fees, and anonymity, right? Those are kind of the main ones that I highlighted. The next point I jotted down, Shambhavi, is supply limit, right? So how many, as we know, the value of anything is determined by supply and demand, right? So people say, oh, well, houses are limited because there's only so much land on earth that you cannot build infinitely. But I mean, not all of the land on earth is even close to taken up with real estate, right? Like you can still build, you can double how many houses there are in the world, right? You can triple it, you can quadruple it, you can go 100x. So again, if the supply of homes is not limited, then you're investing in something that could be, again, inflated away. Does that make sense? Like, for example, in China, they have examples of cities upon cities where the government just built just because they had some plan. So now if you have this excess supply, let's say something like that happens in India, the value of your real estate will go down. Bitcoin, there's only 21 million that'll ever exist, et cetera, et cetera. So again, when you think about it from an investment perspective, long-term, how to save your kind of your work energy, I think Bitcoin far surpasses real estate for that reason. Number 8 is independence. Right? Bitcoin is not controlled by any government or corporation. Real estate is often subject to government regulations and corporate interests, right? So, for example, even if you pay off your house in full, you still pay taxes, right? You pay property taxes. So it's your house. Let's say you buy a shirt at the store. You don't pay taxes to the government. That's your shirt, right? I mean, you pay taxes at the beginning, but after that, it's yours. But your house, even if you pay off your house every year, you have to pay the government taxes. Why? It's your house. You bought it, right? It's because it's not really your house. It's actually the government's, right? In many ways. And so I think even real estate in that way is subject to government control. And this is kind of, maybe, I don't know if it's like the most, I'm trying to think how to kind of phrase this, right? yeah, maybe I'll just skip this next point because I don't want to be too controversial. Okay, number 9, I would say growth potential, right? Growth potential, which is Bitcoin has shown tremendous growth in the last 10 to 11 years, and real estate hasn't. And again, if you look at real estate and you leverage and blah blah blah, you look at all the other things, then you might say, oh no, I did better with real estate. But if you look at apples to apples, Bitcoin takes the cake there. Okay, I can keep going. You want me to pause a bit? Do you have any questions about any of those things? I feel like a professor right now. I
Yeah,
don't want to.
some sort of education that I'm sure everybody who's watching this needs. Because, yeah, I mean, from the traditional aspect, we talk about so many things, especially the liquidity part. That actually hit me the most. Because, yes, of course, if I need money immediately, I need to liquidate money immediately. I cannot be selling my house to somebody like, overnight. Yeah, okay, just take my house, give me some money. But that's not the case with Bitcoin. Will actually can do that with Bitcoin. And also on the transparency part, what is your opinion, Sunny, when it comes to the transparency part with real estate versus Bitcoin?
I mean, transparency, there's like different ways to look at it. Like I just finished saying Bitcoin is anonymous. So there's that. But when people say Bitcoin is transparent, what they mean is every transaction. So like, for example, on the Bitcoin network itself, it doesn't have any names or addresses, right? So it's not like, if I create an account, it's literally just an alphanumeric key pair, like a private public key pair. But all those transactions that occur within the network are broadcasted and are publicly available. So for example, if let's say I'm a charity and I put my Bitcoin public address on my website, anybody who sends money to that address, you can actually go to the blockchain and verify, oh, this charity received this money. Or for example, let's say government started using Bitcoin, you'd have to publicize what your public address is, but upon doing so, you could have a tremendous amount of transparency. You could look at kind of where the money is moving. And so Bitcoin is, again, while it's kind of an oxymoron, because it's like he just said it's anonymous and he's saying it's transparent. But when you understand, this concept of pseudo anonymity, then you kind of start to get what Bitcoin is trying to achieve. So once again, all the transactions in the network are monitored and transparently observable. But again, you don't actually tie your name or your identity to those addresses unless you come to an exchange or unless you have to do KYC. So the Bitcoin network again is different from the exchanges like ours. So I don't know really how to answer that. And then on the real estate side, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard. Like there is no blockchain ledger, obviously. There is no easy way, at least in my mind, to like assess things like supply, right? Because like, what if people are just going and building houses this year? Let's say they double the number of houses. I wouldn't even know that because there's no real time way of monitoring that. And so supply could get, diminished or could be expanded significantly. So again, I do think blockchain is very transparent, and the number of Bitcoin is transparent. The code is open source. So all these things, I think, again, make it far better as an investment vehicle or as like a way to kind of store your wealth. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll pause it for a second, Sunny.
Sure.
Quick message for our audience, guys. If you ever get any messages or call in the name of Unocoin asking you to give you your password, your OTP, or things like that, please do not trust them, because we don't do these things, and any business would not ask you for your OTP or passwords or thing like that. Always be very cautious if you receive any calls, maybe from Unocoin, maybe from any other entity in this space, because yeah, it's a very, you have to be very smart with your holdings and stuff. So be very careful with all of those things. Yes. So
Cool. Yeah. Good. Yeah. That's a good reminder. Because yeah.
yeah, and an important one at that.
Yeah.
So
So keep go ahead.
So when we talk about real estate and Bitcoin, Sunny, see, for people like maybe in their 21 to 25 age generation also, so we kind of will not go and straight off buy real estate because we won't have that kind of money. But are the barriers to enter Bitcoin lower when we talk about this?
Definitely, right? Like, because like I said, to get a mortgage, number one, you need a considerable amount of down payment. You need a bank account. You need good credit if someone's going to give you a mortgage. Yeah, so and with Bitcoin, you need 1 rupee. You can go in and buy Bitcoin, right? So you need, PAN card essentially. So I think the excessive, and you don't even need that. Like I said, that's if you want to buy Bitcoin at Unocoin. But if you want to just earn Bitcoin for your consulting services, IT services, whatever, you can just you can just go right now, download a Bitcoin wallet like Blue Wallet or blockchain.com and easily offer, give people your Bitcoin address. So I think, yes, the barrier to entry is practically nil. And like I said, even my 5-year-old could have a Bitcoin address that I can pay her allowance in, and she can start her ice cream store or lemonade stand and get paid. So like, there's no age limit, there's no money limit, no credit limit. So I do think Bitcoin is far, far more accessible.
Absolutely. And Sunny, when we talk about, like you already mentioned about the whole property tax thing, that is like a cost associated with the ownership part. And do we see any such cost with Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, there's also taxes now in
Yeah,
India,
that is
right?
for gains.
So
So
yeah,
if
for
we can,
years they said, oh, this Bitcoin thing is no value, it's no good, and now they're like, okay, pay us taxes on it. So that's both good and bad, I guess. Mostly, maybe. Okay, yeah. So to answer your question, are there so when you do, I mean, we've done so many episodes on TDS and paying the 30% tax on growth and all that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. So there is that you have to take into consideration. If you're buying Bitcoin, there's obviously, a tiny fee that companies like Unocoin charge. But if you're earning Bitcoin, like if you're working for someone in America or wherever, and they want to pay you in Bitcoin, you can get it, instantaneously and for free in your wallet. So yeah, so I think that way there's not really many barriers. But if you're talking about taxation and comparing it, there is taxes. It's different, obviously, here. And but if you do hold Bitcoin, right, like a home, and you have to pay the 1% to buy it, and then when you sell it, you have to pay 30% on it. But if you just hold the Bitcoin for the long term, you don't need to pay anything on it. So you don't have to pay like a property tax every year if you're holding your Bitcoin. You do have to. Does that make sense? So you only pay that 30% when you liquidate. Yeah,
yeah,
and that kind of applies to most like capital gains
yeah.
assets, and it's obviously on the higher side, and Satvik is on like a 400-day campaign trying to like educate people about why we need less taxes on Bitcoin to drive adoption and all of that. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to put this in simple words, even though we are like doing the same thing with both Bitcoin and the real estate, if we are holding both of them, we still have to pay taxes on real estate. Whereas if we are just holding and not liquidating our Bitcoin, then of course there are no taxes till the
Yeah,
time we don't liquidate it.
exactly.
Otherwise, of course,
Exactly.
if you make gains, you have to. So, Sunny, when we talk about, protection against inflation, we have seen this in history that maybe, like I mentioned, our grandfathers, our dads, they used to mention that, okay, this was the property we were getting for this amount of money. If you would have purchased it, its value would be this much right now. So, obviously, we have seen that real estate's value has also risen over time. Do you think that it is a better hedge against inflation as compared to Bitcoin?
I mean, the ultimate answer would be just like putting the price of Bitcoin over the last 20 years or 10 years against the price of real estate. And my understanding, Bitcoin has outperformed every single asset class in the history of mankind. Like if you look at the last 10 years, I don't think real estate, even in India or anywhere for that matter, comes even close to Bitcoin. So I do. So real estate does act as a hedge against inflation, right? Most people view real estate as a hedge, and I think it does perform as such. But Bitcoin is, like I said, because it's the supply is limited. You can transfer it. It's like a digital gold, right? Like can you compare gold a home. I mean, you can, but not really. Like, I would say Bitcoin is more analogous to something like gold. It's like a digital asset. I mean, but it's digital, obviously. But yeah, but no, so again, I think Bitcoin is a far better hedge against inflation, mainly because once again, it's, there's only 21 million, right? Whereas next year, the number of houses in India double for some reason because the government decides to build it, or whatever. Well, you don't control that. You don't control how many homes, and then if it increases, if the supply goes up a lot, now all of a sudden the value of your home just went down by half, and it's like outside of your control. Whereas Bitcoin, there's no way anybody can change that number, right? So I think that's what makes it far better as an inflation hedge.
Also, Sunny, I agree with that point absolutely. And I mean, it's a win win if we are keeping both of these asset classes side by side and comparing it for the new generations that are, into investment and stuff. Now, of course, I think Bitcoin wins at that part. But when we talk about security, because of course we have seen this issue for hacks and stuff, how would you say still Bitcoin is better than real estate in that aspect?
I mean, you can have, let's say, $10 million worth of Bitcoin in your head. uh, Whereas, let's say, a house, it's physical in nature. So um, everybody knows where your house is and where you are. And um, let's just say you did something. No, let's just say you didn't even do anything wrong, but the government thought you did something wrong because you look exactly like this other lady named Shombhavi who actually went and stole hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Let's just say, and they mistook you for that criminal. They'll just come and take your house. Like, you know what I mean? They'll just come and take your house. Like, thank you very much, Shombhavi. I'm not Shombhavi, I'm Shambhavi. Doesn't matter. Our details say you are the bad guy, bad gal. We're taking you away. We're taking your home. And that $10 million house that you just built your whole life and your family is gone because of a mistake. But now let's say under the same circumstance, someone makes a mistake and they come to you and you're like, I have nothing. Like, I have the $10 million, let's say, in your head. Well, how are they getting that, right? Or let's say you use multi-sig and you secure that Bitcoin across different jurisdictions. There's no way, right? Unless I mean, how would they get into your brain? So what I'm trying to say is that if you're looking at protecting your hard-earned wealth for the long term and in a way where nobody can take it away from you, Bitcoin is far superior. And again, just a slight nuance. I'm not talking about the Bitcoin that you hold on Unocoin or on Binance or Kraken. When you hold your Bitcoin on an exchange, not your keys, not your coins. What does that mean? So that's one of the most important lessons in Bitcoin. When you buy Bitcoin on an Unocoin, it's very, very important that you take possession of that Bitcoin, and you take it onto a cold card wallet or a Trezor or a Ledger or a paper wallet. And you can make a paper wallet on Unocoin's website. We that was actually the first feature we ever launched in 2013, is the ability to create a paper wallet. So you can literally hold all of your Bitcoin on a paper wallet, and you can laminate that paper wallet. You can put it in a safe. You can make multiple copies of it and put it in different safes. But my point is you should, everyone, if you have more than a little bit of Bitcoin, or what you consider to be more than a little bit, you should be taking possession of your Bitcoin. And when you take possession, that's when the beauty of Bitcoin really begins. And then you start to realize, like, why this is so powerful, why people like us were talking about it every day, all day. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I had a couple more points, but I'll let you finish up. I wanted to share with you, but go on.
But yeah, interesting fact here is, I don't know if you're aware of this thing that goes around in India, and I've heard this a lot of times with real estate. If you're renting out your maybe a flat that you own in a very good place, if the person in that stays there for 12 years or more, they can actually they can actually put a claim in the court for your house. Like, okay, it's their place now. So, the risk that is associated, but with your Bitcoins, as long as I think you're remembering your keys, as long as you remember your, all the credentials that are required, nobody can actually, like put a claim, okay, this particular address belongs to me, because it doesn't. So that is another benefit which I see in terms of security when it comes to Bitcoin and our real estate. So, Sunny,
Yep.
one more thing which we often talk about, which is actually one of the main agendas of Bitcoin, the global opportunities. So,
Hmm.
we are comparing these two asset classes. What kind of global opportunities do these,
Great question, right? So once again, Bitcoin is a global asset that can be traded on exchanges around the world. Real estate is localized and dependent on local market conditions. So meaning, like I said, your neighbor goes nuts, goes crazy, and you're like, I don't want to be next to this guy anymore. You literally have to sell your house, and you can't sell it to someone living in Texas because he doesn't care about your house, right, where you're living. So you can only sell it to those people who live around you, who might be looking for a place. Whereas Bitcoin, you could be like, oh, I don't like it here, wherever you're renting, I'm moving to the other side of the world. You just hop on a plane, other side of the world, all your assets are in your head. You go create an account on that exchange in that country, and now you've got all of your hard work like for assets like available to you. So another huge reason why real estate is significantly better than a piece of property is that, again, it's a global asset that is valued everywhere around the world. Whereas again, your house is very, very localized, and it's only interesting to maybe a handful of people.
Absolutely. So here in comment section, Satish Padwal is saying, I want to join the AMA group. So I would request the backend team to please post a link for our Unocoin group on Telegram so that he can join. And affiliate master, if you want to ask a question, then maybe rephrase it like a proper sentence. Will be able to get you that. Okay, Sunny. Yeah, you said you had a few points that you wanted to discuss.
Yeah. So a couple more notes I had here. I think we touched on a lot of them actually. The other one was just the fact that it's digital. I think it's another huge factor, right? So Bitcoin's a digital asset. It's super easy to manage, to store, whereas real estate requires physical maintenance and management. So again, even let's say you have a house, you've paid it all off in full, no mortgage, you're paying the property taxes every year, and you're paying a ton of money to upkeep that home, right? Like, oh, the roof is broken. That'll be whatever, rupees or dollars, right? It's like, oh my God, that's expensive. And no, the toilet broke. Okay, call the plumber. So Bitcoin is just this digital asset. You just secure it, save it, forget about it, and you don't have to worry about it. You're not wasting your weekends trying to upkeep this house and the garden and security and all these other things that come along with physical property. Yeah. What else? Number 4, I had another reason written here as innovation, right? So Bitcoin is part of this like innovative blockchain technology.
Which
So
is
it's
also
highly
ongoing.
innovative. Huh?
Which is also ongoing. The innovation is still ongoing.
Exactly. It's super, if you ask me, super innovative. And I made a claim many years ago that I believe that in 10-15 years, like machines and robots will use Bitcoin more than humans. And I still stand by that. I think that, in the near future, let's say when my Tesla is passing, my friend's Tesla, instead of me high beaming him to get out of the way on the highway, my Tesla will communicate to his and just say, hey, Sonny's running late for a meeting. Here's 50 Satoshis. Can you move your car to the right lane? And it'll all happen automatically, and his car will move and mine will go, and I'll send 50 sats over. But that's not going to happen over Swift or ACH or any NFT or NEFT or IMPS. It's going to happen using some sort of internet-based protocol like Bitcoin and Lightning. So I think, when you think about the future, now AI is all the hype, right? It's like, okay, well, these agents, these autonomous agents, they're going to need some way to commerce between one another. What better than Bitcoin, right? So when you start thinking about like all the different ways that Bitcoin could be valuable for the world of machines and humans, it literally like your mind goes crazy. Whereas like your house is like, okay, fancy toilet, nice. Like I've seen a toilet before, I've seen a sink before, nothing crazy going on there. So I think innovation is another interesting thing, right? You're kind of like latching on to like ideally one of the, I mean, in my mind, one of the most kind of interesting things in the world. Okay, what else? What else? I think there's a couple of things. So I think Bitcoin can easily be fit into a portfolio for diversification, right? So one thing you're seeing this year is that the price of Bitcoin is starting to like what's the word? It's like uncorrelated to the rest of the market. And that's a really, really kind of exciting proposition and important thesis, because a lot of people have been predicting that, hey, Bitcoin will be the opposite of everything else, but it hasn't truly played out until this year in a big way. And so that's awesome, because let's say you have a portfolio, you're a wealthy person, you have hundreds of millions of dollars, and you want to put some Bitcoin into your portfolio. It's very easy. You can just go buy some Bitcoin in an exchange or whatever, OTC desk, and now you've got it. Again, buying a real estate and trying to put that into your diversified portfolio is hard. It takes time. You have to put a lot of money down. Right. So I think Bitcoin is great that way. What else? Fractional ownership, right? So you can own a fraction of a Bitcoin. A lot of people think, oh, you have to buy one Bitcoin and
Yes.
Bitcoin's too expensive.
It's expensive.
You can own 10 rupees of Bitcoin today. You can divide Bitcoin into smaller and smaller amounts. Can you divide a home? No, you can't really own a fractional amount of a home. It's like when you buy a home, you have to buy that home and it's your home. But you can't, divide it and say, I'll just buy, 1% of the home. Like that's just not possible. Yeah. What else? And then some other areas I think that are exciting is less so maybe than the other points we made, but this concept of smart contracts, right? Which I would argue Ethereum has really popularized, but people don't realize that Bitcoin also has the ability to, write smart contracts. So there's things like RSK and Liquid and all these new platforms that are coming out that enable smart contracts. So Bitcoin can be used inside of smart contracts for automated agreements. Real estate is kind of the opposite way, right? They're using paper and legal documentation and kind of old school ways of contracts, right? So again, it offers a very, very different way. Portability, which I think we kind of talked about, in different ways, but I think portability is another issue, another great thing about Bitcoin, right? Let's just say there's some problem in your country and you need to leave, right? I mean, we hear stories like that all the time where, there's something, war happens or something, and now people need to leave the country. Well, let's say if you need to leave and your house is there, well, all that wealth is gone, right? So Bitcoin is even better than gold in the sense that even if you had gold, lots of gold, let's say, how do you now walk that gold across the border? How do you take that gold with you? At the border, they don't allow it. Okay, you're gone. Your gold is confiscated. So Bitcoin, again, it's highly, it's interesting, you could say, because it's very portable. We talked about no property taxes, and I would say the last reason I have written here is customizable security, right? So Bitcoin owners can customize their level of security. So whether it's using multi-signature or, like I said, a brain wallet, and depending on how much Bitcoin they have, how scared they are of losing it, they could devise a very, very interesting security protocol to keep that Bitcoin safe in such a way that even the strongest military in the world, let's say the United States government, couldn't get it. Like that's how powerful it is. Like it's literally military grade cryptography that no human on earth can penetrate, right? All the guns in the world, all the stealth bombers in the world can't take away your Bitcoin. And there is this kind of new narrative around how Bitcoin is, this soft power that like all countries will be fighting over, right? Whereas again, real estate, it's a very standardized way of kind of keeping your house secure. You have a lock on the front door, you have an alarm system maybe at most, but it's very old school, and it's not super easy to keep secure because once again, you're in a known location. If a bad guy was truly motivated, they could probably get into your house somehow. Whereas Bitcoin, they don't even know where it is. Oh, you buried it in the sand in some desert, 1/10 of your key, and the other 10th is in a bank vault in Switzerland, and another, 10th of your key is under the ocean or something. Like you could literally be super, super, like clever about how you keep it secure. So I'd say those are, kind of some of the big reasons. I'd say just to kind of rip through them again: liquidity, transferability, divisibility, accessibility, low transaction fees, anonymity, supply limit, the independence kind of argument, right? Bitcoin gives you this like freedom. The growth potential of the price of Bitcoin, we think, is far greater. 24/7 markets, global markets, the digital nature of Bitcoin versus the physical nature, a hedge against inflation, which I would argue is maybe the best thing about Bitcoin. The fact that it's innovative, the fact that it allows you to diversify your portfolio quite easily, the fact that you can own a fraction of a Bitcoin, the fact that you can do smart contracts, you have portability, no property taxes, and then also customizable security. Those are the 20 kind of bullet points I had highlighted for this call, Shambhavi.
I think those points are absolutely amazing. And Ravindra Katarki here is saying inheritance of Bitcoin compared to real estate will be another interesting innovation to watch. I 100% agree about that part. And on this note, Sunny, we'll be ending our EMA for today. Guys, one
Can I
quick.
just can I say one thing? Pamela Morgan, look up her book. She has a book on inheritance and Bitcoin, probably the best book I've read. Yeah, check out Pamela Morgan. She's friends with Antonopoulos. Yeah, sorry, some of you go ahead.
Absolutely. So, Ravindra, please check out this book. And as for the rest of you guys, if you want a specific speaker in one of our AMEs, you can tag them if they're on YouTube or whichever platform, if you can tag them, or just name them in the comment section. Also, if there's a specific topic that you want us to talk about with certain subject matter experts or Satvik or Sunny, let us know in the comment section and we will do our best to arrange whatever we can around that, because of course it's all about serving your purposes and educating you guys around whatever you want to learn. So on this note,
Shelly,
again,
I gotta run. So I got another call. I gotta go on. Okay, so I'm gonna go leave.
Okay.
But thank you for your time. Bye bye, everyone.
Definitely, thanks for being here.
Cheers.
Okay, so amazing session, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you again soon for another one of our AMAs. Till then, bye bye and keep following Unocoin.